Hi, this is Roger Helland, Prayer Ambassador of the Evangelical Fellowship of Canada. You know, as a former pastor and denominational leader and adjunct professor, I love churches and I love church leaders with a flaming passion to see flourishing congregations. You know, we've all explored church growth, church health, and mission, but in today's anxious and conflicted world, there's a trumpet call for renewal and revival. Richard Owen Roberts, the late president of International Awakening Ministries, who worked with the Billy Graham Evangelistic Association, stated that the sobering truth is that the greatest hindrance to the growth of Christianity in today's world is the absence of the manifest presence of God from the church. So without God's manifest presence, can congregations flourish? Psalm 16:11 announces, "You make known to me the path of life, and in your presence there is fullness of joy, and at your right hand are pleasures forevermore." In the Old Testament, we know that Jerusalem was the place of the temple, the habitation of God's manifest presence. But in the New Testament, we know that the church is the habitation of God's presence by the Spirit. And when people taste and see the Lord is good, nothing else will satisfy them. I've encountered, as scores of others have, times in private and public settings where God's presence was so strong it felt thick and weighty and electric, where I was speechless and I couldn't move, and I was drawn to either tears or joy. And to encounter God's presence is to really personally know His kavod, the Hebrew word for glory. Habakkuk 2:14 announces, "For the earth will be filled with the knowledge of the glory, the kavod of God, as the waters covers the sea." Presence-centered churches experience supernatural transformation, healing, and holiness. A.W. Tozer advised that the kind of revival we need today is a revival of reverence and sacredness in the presence of God. And this needs to happen personally and then flow over into the church setting. While many churches became seeker-centered, purpose-centered, gospel-centered, or even mission-centered, I believe they should become presence-centered churches. Psalm 105:4 invites us to seek the Lord and His strength and to seek His presence continually. This means to seek God's face rather than His hand. And the core discipleship practice to cultivate a presence-centered church is scripture-fed, spirit-led private and public prayer. While most churches are centered around songs and sermons or the sacraments, Jesus said, "My house, my temple, the place of God's presence, shall be a house of prayer." Daniel Henderson argues that prayerlessness is our declaration of independence from God. John Wesley advised that the neglect of prayer is a grand hindrance to holiness, and John Calvin asserted prayer is the chief exercise of faith. In 2021, the Flourishing Congregation Institute published the results of their nationwide survey that determined the top 6 most important congregational life elements that impacted their spiritual life. Preaching and teaching ranked first, music and singing ranked second, the Eucharist or communion ranked third, while prayer ranked fifth, below volunteering in church and just above small groups. But maybe you could cut out 5 minutes from the singing and 10 minutes from the sermon and add 15 minutes to carefully planned prayer in your congregation services. Here are 2 questions you might explore. Number 1, to what extent is prayer a core practice in your church to the same degree as songs, sermons, or the sacraments might be? Number 2, what could happen if your congregation, like Center Street Church in Calgary, decided to become a praying church, a house of prayer? So for a biblical and practical guide on how to seek, experience, and host God's presence in your discipleship, in your home, in your workplace, in your church, for daily renewal and joy, please see my new book, Pursuing God's Presence. And may God empower you to cultivate a presence-centered church.